In the vibrant city of Odanjo, Adisa and her husband, Obafemi, were eagerly preparing for the arrival of their first child. Their modest home was filled with baby clothes, toys, and the laughter of anticipation. Adisa, glowing in her third trimester, was thrilled when her mother, Ifunk, offered to move in and help. Ifunk, a spirited woman who took pride in her youthful looks, arrived with her usual flair. Her colorful wardrobe and confident demeanor lit up the house. Adisa felt relieved, knowing she could lean on her mother during this exhausting phase of her pregnancy. Obafemi welcomed Ifunk warmly but found himself increasingly drawn to her charm. Her playful jokes, graceful movements, and striking appearance captured his attention in ways he couldn't explain. Ifunk, used to admiration, noticed his lingering glances but brushed them off with a smile. Adisa, focused on her pregnancy, didn't sense the subtle tension brewing in her home. She often spent her evenings planning for the baby's arrival, leaving Obafemi and Ifunk alone in the living room. One evening, as Adisa rested, Obafemi and Ifunk shared a casual conversation over tea. The closeness between them felt natural yet charged with an unspoken energy. "I'm grateful you're here," Obafemi said, his voice warm. Ifunk chuckled. "You're lucky to have a wonderful wife like Adisa." Though her words were innocent, her tone hinted at a mutual understanding. As days turned into weeks, their interactions became more frequent. Though neither acknowledged it, a spark had ignited, a dangerous attraction that neither could fully resist. Meanwhile, Adisa remained blissfully unaware, trusting her husband and mother completely. Ifunk adjusted quickly to life in the household. She spent her days helping Adisa with chores and preparing meals, all while maintaining her vibrant energy. Her outfits, bright, fitted dresses, accentuated her beauty, catching Obafemi's eye more often than he cared to admit. One morning, as Ifunk bent to retrieve something from the floor, Obafemi couldn't look away. The way her dress hugged her figure sent a wave of guilt through him, but he couldn't help himself. Ifunk straightened, catching his gaze. "Obafemi, are you okay?" she asked with a playful smirk. He stammered, "Oh, yes, I was just thinking about something." Adisa began noticing her husband's distracted behavior. Over dinner, she asked, "Is something bothering you, Femi?" He smiled and shook his head. "Work's just been hectic," he replied, deflecting her concern. The dynamic between Obafemi and Ifunk grew more charged. While Adisa napped one afternoon, Obafemi found himself in the kitchen with Ifunk again. She was cooking, and the aroma of her food filled the space. "You're a fantastic cook," he complimented her. She laughed lightly. "Adisa has always loved my cooking." Their hands brushed as she handed him a plate, and for a moment, they froze. Obafemi's heart raced, and Ifunk's breath hitched. "I think I should go check on Adisa," she said hurriedly, breaking the tension. That evening, as Ifunk stood before her mirror, she whispered to herself, "What are you doing, Ifunk?" Though she knew the risks, she couldn't deny the thrill she felt under Obafemi's gaze. Meanwhile, Obafemi lay awake, consumed by thoughts of his mother-in-law. Across the hall, Ifunk wrestled with the same emotions. The boundaries between them were beginning to blur. Adisa's pregnancy demanded her full attention, leaving her exhausted and often asleep early. This gave Ifunk and Obafemi more opportunities to spend time alone. While Adisa rested, they shared late-night conversations that grew increasingly personal. One evening, as Ifunk tidied the living room, Obafemi approached her. "You don't have to do everything, Mama Ifunk," he said softly, using the affectionate term for his mother-in-law. She smiled, "It keeps me busy. Besides, I enjoy helping." Their words hung in the air as silence filled the space. Obafemi hesitated before saying, "You're remarkable, you know. The way you carry yourself, your energy, it's inspiring." Ifunk froze, unsure how to respond. "Obafemi," she began, her voice faltering, "you're kind, but..." Before she could finish, their eyes met, and the unspoken tension between them ignited. Obafemi stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Ifunk," he murmured, but she stepped back quickly. "This isn't right," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. The next morning, Ifunk avoided Obafemi, hoping to suppress the feelings that had surfaced. However, Obafemi found her in the kitchen later that day. "I'm sorry about last night," he said earnestly. "It won't happen again." Ifunk nodded, though she avoided meeting his eyes. Adisa, oblivious to the growing tension, was preoccupied with preparing for their baby. She mentioned how much she appreciated Ifunk's help, which only deepened Ifunk's guilt. Still, she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest when Obafemi was near. Their interactions grew more charged as both struggled with their emotions. The line they had sworn not to cross was becoming increasingly blurred, and both feared it was only a matter of time before their restraint broke. The breaking point came one afternoon when Adisa left for a prenatal class. Ifunk and Obafemi were alone in the house, and the air between them was electric. As Ifunk washed dishes in the kitchen, Obafemi approached her. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly. She glanced at him but didn't respond. He continued, "I can't stop thinking about you." "Obafemi, this is wrong," Ifunk whispered, her voice trembling. "Adisa, trust us." "I know," he replied, stepping closer. "But I can't fight how I feel." Ifunk turned to face him, her expression torn between guilt and longing. "We can't," she said, even as her body betrayed her hesitation. Without another word, Obafemi leaned in, and their lips met in a forbidden kiss. It was brief but filled with unspoken emotion. When they pulled away, both were breathless, their guilt weighing heavily on them. Ifunk stepped back, shaking her head. "This can't happen again," she said firmly, though her voice lacked conviction. Obafemi nodded, but his eyes betrayed his true feelings. From that moment, their affair began in secret. They met late at night when Adisa was asleep, their stolen moments filled with passion and regret. Both knew the risk they were taking but found themselves unable to stop. Meanwhile, Adisa noticed Obafemi becoming more distant. "You've been so distracted lately," she said one evening. Obafemi forced a smile, just tired. Adisa, too busy with her pregnancy, accepted his explanation, unaware of the betrayal unfolding in her home. As the weeks passed, Obafemi's attention toward Adisa dwindled. Once attentive and loving, he now seemed distant and cold. Adisa, heavily pregnant, felt the emotional void keenly. "Femi, we have the baby shower this weekend. Are you excited?" she asked one evening. "Sure," he replied absently, barely glancing up from his phone. Meanwhile, Obafemi showered Ifunk with affection. He found reasons to linger near her, offering compliments and small tokens of his admiration. Ifunk, though initially hesitant, began to revel in the attention. She rationalized their affair as a fleeting indulgence, something that wouldn't harm Adisa if kept secret. Adisa noticed the subtle shift in their dynamic. "You and Mama Ifunk seem close," she remarked one evening. Obafemi shrugged. "She's been a great help," he said, avoiding eye contact. Adisa smiled faintly, wanting to believe him. Obafemi's neglect became more apparent during routine tasks. He skipped prenatal classes and showed little interest in preparing for the baby's arrival. Adisa felt isolated but blamed it on his work stress. "I give him time," she told herself, unaware of the growing betrayal. One night, Adisa woke to find Obafemi missing from their bed. She wandered into the living room and found him sitting close to Ifunk, their laughter echoing softly. "What's going on?" Adisa asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Just talking," Obafemi replied, his tone nonchalant. Adisa retreated, her heart heavy with unease. Across the room, Ifunk avoided her gaze, guilt weighing on her like a stone. Despite her remorse, she couldn't bring herself to end the affair. Both she and Obafemi were caught in a web of passion and deceit, hurtling toward inevitable disaster. Adisa's world shattered one fateful afternoon. She returned home early from a friend's baby shower, arms full of gifts, only to hear muffled voices coming from her bedroom. Pushing open the door, she froze at the sight of Ifunk and Obafemi in her bed, their intimacy undeniable. "What is this?" Adisa screamed, dropping the gifts to the floor. Obafemi scrambled to cover himself, stammering, "Adisa, I can explain." Ifunk, wrapped in a sheet, looked away, unable to meet her daughter's eyes. "Explain," Adisa yelled, her voice breaking. "How could you? Both of you? In my bed?" Obafemi moved to stand in front of Ifunk, shielding her. "Please calm down, Adisa," he said, his tone defensive. "It's not what it looks like." Adisa's fury boiled over. "Not what it looks like? You're protecting her. My own mother." Tears streamed down her face as she pointed to the door. "Get out. Both of you. Get out of my house." Obafemi hesitated but eventually gathered his things. Ifunk, sobbing, tried to explain, "Adisa, I'm sorry. Don't speak to me," Adisa shouted. "You've destroyed my family. I never want to see you again." That evening, Adisa called her lawyer and filed for divorce. She blocked both Obafemi and Ifunk's numbers, shutting herself off from their attempts to contact her. Alone in her home, she wept for the life she had lost. Ifunk moved out the day after the confrontation, staying temporarily with a friend in the bustling city of Orikoro. She met Kola, a dashing and confident man who worked as a consultant at a local cafe. Kola's charm and attention swept her off her feet, offering her a distraction from the guilt she carried. Meanwhile, Obafemi's life spiraled. With Ifunk gone and Adisa refusing to speak to him, he found himself alone in the house that once brimmed with warmth. He attempted to contact Adisa multiple times, but her silence was unwavering. "Adisa, please hear me out," he wrote in a message she never opened. Adisa focused on her pregnancy, pouring her energy into preparing for the twins. She leaned on her close friends and began seeing a therapist to process her heartbreak. "You didn't deserve what happened," her therapist told her. "Focus on yourself and your children." Ifunk, meanwhile, grew closer to Kola. Unlike Obafemi, Kola respected her independence and didn't ask her to compromise her values. Over time, she realized her affair with Obafemi had been driven by loneliness and a need for validation. "I made a mistake," she admitted to herself, "but I won't let it define me." Obafemi, desperate and regretful, tried reaching out to Ifunk, only to be met with rejection. "I've moved on," she told him firmly. "You should, too." Alone, Obafemi began reflecting on his actions. He realized how deeply he had hurt Adisa and how much he missed her. Determined to change, he resolved to win her back, though he knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. Obafemi sought redemption by changing his ways. He started attending therapy, speaking to a trusted elder in the community, and volunteering at local events. "You have to prove your sincerity, not just speak of it," the elder advised him. Adisa, now heavily pregnant, maintained her distance. However, when she experienced complications one night and was rushed to the hospital, Obafemi appeared at her side. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Despite her anger, Adisa allowed him to stay. In the days that followed, Obafemi devoted himself to caring for Adisa. He cooked her meals, cleaned the house, and accompanied her to every doctor's appointment. His sincerity began to chip away at Adisa's guarded heart. One evening, as they sat in silence, Adisa spoke. "Why are you doing this, Femi? Is it guilt?" He shook his head. "It's because I love you. I was blind, selfish, I'm foolish, but I want to make things right for you and our children. Adisa, though moved, remained cautious. It's not that simple, she said. Obafemi nodded, understanding that trust would take time to rebuild. I'll wait as long as it takes, he replied. Slowly, Adisa began to see the man she had fallen in love with resurface. Though hesitant, she allowed him to stay, if only for the sake of their children. The weeks leading up to the twins' birth were filled with cautious hope. Adisa watched as Obafemi worked tirelessly to regain her trust. He painted the nursery, attended bathing classes, and read parenting books with an enthusiasm she hadn't seen before. I know I've hurt you, he said one evening as they assembled cribs together. But I'll never stop trying to earn your forgiveness. Adisa looked at him, her expression softening. You've come a long way, Femi, but trust doesn't come easily after what you've done. Obafemi understood and remained patient. He celebrated every small victory when Adisa laughed at one of his jokes or let him hold her hand during a prenatal visit. Slowly, the wall between them began to crumble. The day of the twins' birth arrived, and Obafemi was by Adisa's side every step of the way. He held her hand through labor, whispering words of encouragement. When the twins, a boy and a girl, were born, his tears flowed freely. They are perfect, he said, cradling the newborns. For the first time in months, Adisa smiled at him, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. We're not there yet, she said, but maybe someday. Life with twins was exhausting but joyful. Obafemi poured his heart into fatherhood, changing diapers, feeding the babies, and ensuring Adisa had time to rest. His devotion didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as the twins slept, Adisa and Obafemi sat together in the living room. You've changed, she said, her voice quiet but sincere. I never thought I could forgive you, but seeing how much you've worked for this family, I think I can try. Obafemi's eyes filled with gratitude. I promise, Adisa, I'll never hurt you again. Their bond slowly mended as they navigated parenthood together. They shared moments of joy, like their twins' first smiles, and leaned on each other during sleepless nights. Months later, as they watched their children play, Adisa turned to Obafemi. I forgive you, she said simply. He hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. The story ended with the family united, their love rekindled. Though scarred, they emerged stronger, proving that even the most tangled webs can be unraveled with patience, growth, and genuine effort. Thank you so much for watching this incredible tale unfold. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who tuned in to listen. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, share, and leave us a comment below. We love hearing your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you're always the first to know when we upload new stories. There's plenty more to come, and we can't wait to share them with you. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned for more amazing stories.